You're probably here because you've just seen Jubilee's Middle Ground episode, Gays versus Ex-Gays, that I was honored to be a part of. I want to give my feedback on this episode releasing today and my thoughts about why I did this episode to begin with. When I was invited to do this conversation in particular, I was actually really excited because this is one of my core convictions. Ex-gays don't exist. And I think we proved that pretty clearly throughout the course of this episode. Every single ex-gay in this episode admitted that they still struggle with same-sex attraction, that they had not, in fact, been healed and delivered from their sexuality, despite the fact that they continued to claim that even after admitting they still struggled with their sexuality. The truth is, they're choosing to repress and not engage their God-given sexual orientation because of a misinterpretation of 6 Bible verses or what they heard in church. They are not actually healed and delivered. They are just choosing to not be who God made them to be. And I hope everyone saw that loud and clear. This episode was also pretty frustrating because of one particular prompt where Jubilee asked, "Do all LGBT people go to hell?" And every single one of the ex-gays stepped forward. And you can see a little bit of this in the episode, but us gays standing behind them were furious because what an arrogant statement to make. Not even the most conservative Christians today would say that all queer people go to hell, but yet these ex-gays communicate it to the millions of people that will watch this video that they're just hellbound and there's nothing they can do about it. Their sexuality, this innate part of them that they didn't choose, is going to damn them to hell for eternity. What kind of God is that? What kind of religion is that? It is certainly not the God revealed in Jesus. It is certainly not true biblical Christianity. And I think you heard our responses to that prompt. We expressed our frustration and anger and amazement that any person would step forward and say such a ridiculous thing. The truth is that the church is changing. In America today, a majority of Protestant denominations are now fully inclusive of LGBT people because people have done the work and studied the Bible and realized that homosexuality is not condemned. Transgender identity is not condemned. All 6 verses that traditionally are used to condemn LGBT people are actually misunderstandings, misinterpretations, and mistranslations. And they actually, those verses, condemn abuse and exploitation, things that should be condemned, not LGBT people and our lives and love. The thing is, God does not want to change anybody's sexuality because our sexuality is an innate part of who we are, and God doesn't make mistakes. Every person is made in God's image and likeness, and that includes all queer people. In our queerness, in our diversity, we reflect God's creativity, and we should not try to conform our lives to some arbitrary religious standards that aren't even biblical. My fear for this episode is that millions of young LGBT people who are in religious environments will see the ex-gays, hear them say that homosexuality is demonic and they need to be delivered of it, and then spend years praying to God or going to conversion therapy, God forbid, trying to change their sexuality, only to come to the same place that each one of those ex-gays came to, not being changed. And that causes so much mental distress and harm because it makes the person feel like they're not trying hard enough, that there's something wrong with them, that they're far from God or have been abandoned by God and are just destined for hell. That is so traumatic, it's so psychologically harmful, and it's so blatantly false. I hope if you're an LGBT young person in a religious context, you see us LGBT people on this episode and know that you can live a healthy, holy, vibrant life as a queer person, that you don't need to change who you are because God made you the way you are in God's own image. And your queerness is a gift. It reflects God's own creativity and God's own beauty. At the end of the day, I hope that we LGBT people on this episode stood our ground well, that you can see the lies of the ex-gay side, and I hope you'll join me in praying for each one of the ex-gays, that they will have their eyes open to see that they don't have to keep repressing who God made them to be in order to follow Jesus, in order to be a Christian, because God welcomes each one of us just as we are into our rightful place at the table of God's grace.